Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to 2015's Christmas Special. Christmas is such an exciting time to spend with friends and family, and of course, I have to make a special about it, cause I love Christmas. Today, we're going over Pokemon creepypastas, stories about scary ghosts and haunted towers. I hope you appreciate what I go through for you guys. I read 122 stories for this video, so here goes. Also, since I wanted to keep things fresh, I decided to not include these certain stories since I have already talked about them on the channel before. And it was quite hard for me to narrow it down to 10 stories. So who knows, I might make a follow-up video to this video sometime in the future. We'll see. Time to count down the top 10 scariest Pokemon creepypastas. Sit back and enjoy. Number 10. Gengar and Clefable. Gengar and Clefable have, through trademarking and beta art, been proven to have been some of the earliest Pokemon made. Coincidentally, they are also some of the first Pokemon when you list the original 151 by index number, with Gengar appearing shortly after Clefable. Also, Clefairy was originally going to be the mascot of Pokemon, instead of Pikachu, so it was going to be a pretty important Pokemon. Gengar is known as the Shadow Pokemon, but what exactly is it a shadow of? Take a look at a picture of Clefable, and then one of Gengar. Their body shapes are almost exactly alike, with the only major difference being that Clefable has a curl for its hair and tail, while Gengar has spikes. However, the shadow of an upright spiral, like Clefable's tail, would only be a line or a spike. Now look at their typings. One of normal type, and the other has ghost type. Due to their immunities, neither of them could hit the other with stab attacks, since they'd just be immune to each other. Have you ever tried to hit your own shadow? Number 9. The Pokemon War Theory. You have no father, and your best friend is an orphan. Children are going to a journey around the world. Your mother accepts you as the man of the house, making your own decisions. Old man warns you of danger around the corner. Most people you meet are children and or gym leaders. Most adult men are either very old or have a job related to the military or organized crime. Hospitals and gyms are everywhere, but no forms of entertainment such as movie theaters. Lieutenant Surge says, "Hey kid, what do you think you're doing here? You wouldn't live long in combat, that's for sure. I tell you what, kid, electric Pokemon saved me during the war." You now realize that there was a war in Kanto. Your father died, and your rival lost his parents. You are among the first generation of people to live in peace at a post-war time. Number 8. The Ditto Theory. Think about it. Mew and Ditto are the same weight, 8.8 pounds. They are also the same color, and they have the same shiny color too. Mew and Ditto no transform. They can both learn every move in Pokemon, but in Ditto's case, only for a certain amount of PP. Ditto is mostly spotted in the Cinnabar Island mansion, where the Mew and Mewtwo experiments took place. Mew's experiment went wrong, and it came out as a new Pokemon, Ditto. Ditto is Mew, but its molecules are all scattered, so that's why it's shorter and wider, as well as having no bone structure. Mew is said to contain every Pokemon's DNA, and Ditto is said it can breed with every single Pokemon, with very few exceptions outside of legendary Pokemon. If you watched the movie Pokemon the Movie 1, Mewtwo Strikes Back, it's said there was a failed experiment in the beginning. Now that I look back on it, it could have been Ditto. Number 7. Wally. What can be said about Wally from Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald? Instead of being a cocky, arrogant, and overly confident rival, he's a young boy who wants nothing more than to be a good Pokemon trainer. He wanted nothing more than to win for once. This story begins with the author finding the urge to play Pokemon Ruby again after years of leaving it be. He plays the game normally, and decides to see Wally once more. As he enters the cave, where Wally eagerly awaits you, he approaches Wally and presses A to talk to him. The screen fades to black, and battle music ensues, but the scene quickly fades in again, and Wally is gone. As the author takes another step, his Pokénav rings. It's Wally calling, who tells the author to come to Petalburg. The author flies to the town, and notices that all color is washed out, while fog clouds the area. The town seems empty, until the author finds 7 people standing outside of Wally's house. The people seem saddened, and seems to blame the player for something, claiming that everything is their fault. The author enters the house, and his worries are confirmed. A black coffin rested in the middle of the home. Wally was dead. The people standing around the coffin kept blaming the player, and Wally's mother told the author what happened. The damp cave air aggravated his condition. He strained himself to become better so he could finally be as good as you, but he pushed himself too hard. His body gave out. A hiker found him, a Pokeball clutched in his little hand, his Pokemon refusing to leave his side. He called us using Wally's nav. Do you know what it's like? Being informed by a total stranger that someone you love is dead? Pay your respects and leave. This is all your fault. The author slowly walks up to Wally's coffin. A single word appears in the dialogue box. Why? A battle starts against Wally, except now his skin was pale, his colors were washed out, and he looks quite sad. Pokemon trainer Wally once won last battle. The author, for some reason, decides he wants to win against Wally, and plows through his team. The battle ends, and Wally's sprite appears once more, mostly transparent. Why can't you let me win? The battle ended. Wally's mother went up to the player. Get out. You're done here. You disgust me. The mother shoves the player out the door, and instead of appearing outside the house, the screen cuts to white. Credits roll. Afterwards, a scene appears of the citizens of Petalburg carrying the tiny casket around town. The camera follows them as they stop at the small patch of grass where Wally had caught his Ralts. They then stop and turn to face the screen. The screen fades to white one last time, and Wally's sprite fades in. Beneath his sprite were 3 words. In loving memory. Number 6. Duskull and Dusclops. In the Hoenn region, there is no Pokemon Tower. There's nothing but a big, foreboding mountain called Mount Pyre, which serves as a large, chaotic gravesite for Pokemon in said region. Curious daredevils will venture to this place, but beware. If you see a skull floating around in the air, or resting on the ground, turn away. Don't let it see you, and flee, as quietly as you can. Don't let it see you. This Pokemon is known as Duskull. They are everywhere, and if you look into the sockets of its skull, you'll see its red eyes. This is because the creature is casting hypnosis. Try not to fall asleep, and if you do, try to wake up as fast as you can. You'll feel it, the darkness that surrounds Duskull. It's wrapping around you. Try to wake up. You might only be wrapped up to your knees, and that's fine. You can live without lower legs. If you don't wake up, all hope is lost. If it has not wrapped up your arms, and you can move them, feel your face. The skull will have attached itself to you. Pull it off. Really pull at it. They're stubborn. If you can't, grab a nearby rock and smash the skull off your head. If you get it off, and you can still move, leave and go to a hospital. You may have lost a few limbs, but you got away. If you can't get it off, the Duskull will wrap its bandages around you entirely. They will wrap around your chest too tightly, and your breathing will be restricted. They will wrap around your neck and choke you, and they will wrap around your skull. It has control over you now. There's no point in struggling any further. You're not dead, so do not worry. In fact, you'll never die. You will be forever strangled by the bandages, as the new Dusclops uses your body as its physical form. It is a noble thing to do, helping a Pokemon evolve after all. With the air flowing to your brain now restricted, your brain will soon lose functionality anyways. Soon enough, you won't even remember being human at all. Number 5. Ketsu Bun. This story details how Giovanni, the overly confident leader of Team Rocket, is challenged in his gym by a young boy with a red jacket, a black t-shirt, and a red-white cap pulled low over his eyes. Giovanni began by trying to intimidate the young boy, who to his surprise remained unfazed by his words. The challenger stepped forward, and Giovanni, still taken back by the young child's determination, threw his first Pokeball, and his trusty Rhyhorn appeared. Rhyhorn's frightening appearance had sent shivers down multiple opponents in the past, but the child stared at Giovanni's Pokemon without a sign of fear. The trainer threw his own Pokeball, but a problem was noticeable. The device was malfunctioning. The ball was shaking, emitting bursts of red light, and as sparks jumped across its surface, the ball seemed ready to explode from the pressure of what was inside it. As the ball opened, a pale, sickly orange light emitted from it. As the light dimmed, Giovanni caught a first glimpse of what the Pokeball had contained. It was a jumbled, incoherent pile of trash. Before he could get a closer look, the creature expelled a stream of brown-colored liquid, hissing as it did so. "Water gun," commanded the child. The fluid impacted Rhyhorn in the face. Rhyhorn did not falter, however. It stood still, but something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. It did not turn its head to receive orders. It stood frozen to the spot. As Giovanni walked around to examine its face, he found it scrambled, with no discernible features. Various pieces of eyes, mouth, and nose were scattered around its now ruined face, and more closely resembled a disassembled jigsaw puzzle than anything else on a featureless gray background. Rhyhorn had not fainted. It had no signs of collapse or fatigue, but it was clearly dead. Giovanni averted his eyes from this poor, ruined creature and returned it to its Pokeball. But he would not give up. After all, he was undefeated. This child would not prove a challenge to his stronger Pokemon. He sent out his Nidoking. As he examined the pile of trash, he came to a sudden realization. What he had assumed to be pieces of trash were instead pieces of various different Pokemon. There was a Bulbasaur tail, there was a Feral beak, and a Blastoise arm. all pieces stitched together into an abomination. There were other things as well, things he could not recognize. Letters, numbers, pieces of signs and buildings, and chilling geometric patterns. And it had become distinctively larger than what it had been previously. With each second, the creature grew. He ordered Nidoking to attack. At the last second, he tried to ward it, but it was too late. "Sky attack," said the boy. His lips were not moving, and he had been standing in the same spot as he had done when the battle had begun. The boy's clothes were becoming distorted, becoming patterns of numbers and letters and Pokemon fragments. Nidoking could not be saved. The trash was no longer only larger, but was also spreading. The walls were spattered with it, and Giovanni's floor was covered in refuse. As he reached for another Pokeball, he discovered that his hand was no longer working the way it should. For even his hand had not escaped the monster's influence. His hand was now gruesomely disfigured. Giovanni tried to scream, but no sound came. He fumbled with his Pokeball and tossed it onto the ground haphazardly. Rhydon emerged, and the trash wasted no time corrupting it as well. Across the arena, the child no longer bore any resemblance to a human being. He was already consumed by the piles of trash. Only the red and white cap remained, pulled over where the trainer's eyes used to be. On the cap were 3 words. "Future Pokemon Master," it said. The boy's lips could not move, but the abomination attacked anyways. It let out a hideous scream, torn from the larynxes of nearly every Pokemon in Kanto, twisted and brought together to form a loud, unending screech. The monster continued to grow, and Giovanni felt his consciousness slipping. The walls in his gym had turned to sludge, and he felt his body crumble around him. Rhydon was melting beside him, and the young boy and his putrid Pokemon merged into one. A single puddle of liquid death. The trash filled Giovanni's vision, and it at last invaded his final thoughts as he saw the world disintegrate, as the abomination consumed all. Number 4. Strangled Red. Strangled Red begins with the author finding a Pokemon Red cartridge in a dumpster close to his neighbor's house. He went over to his neighbors and asked if he could have it, and they seemed perplexed, as if they had never seen the cartridge before. But alas, they let him have it. The cartridge was in good condition, with a minor tear in the sticker on it across the Charizard's neck. When the author booted the game up, he was disappointed when he saw that the title of the game was Pokemon Strangled Red version. It was a hack, and not the original version. Despite this, the author wanted to see what it could contain. The game began as the player character was standing in his room. The author checked the pause menu and noticed that his trainer's name was Steven. It wasn't the author's real name or anything like that, but simply a name that had been chosen. Steven owned a level 5 Charmander named Miki, and the game seemed relatively normal. As the game went on, it became apparent that Steven seemed to have history with the people in Pallet Town, as they all seemed to acknowledge the fact that he was about to go on a great journey, and his brother Mike was the one to initiate the first battle with him. The game turned out to be taking place 1 year before the events of the original Pokemon Red, and the game remained largely unchanged, save for the fact that Lavender Town had not been invaded by Team Rocket yet. When the author attempted to enter the Pokemon Tower, Steven simply said, "I have no reason to be here." After beating the Elite Four and his rival, which turned out to be his brother, they both congratulated each other on their progress before the game turned to white. No Hall of Fame, nor credits. When the screen faded back, the two brothers were back at their house again, talking to one another. Mike apparently wanted to borrow something, or someone from Steven, and after reluctantly doing so, the usual animation of trading Pokemon began. Mickey, Steven's trusty and first Pokemon, was the one being traded. But then the game froze. The author jumped at the sudden noise and restarted the game. His jaw dropped at what he was greeted with. 1 year later. The Lavender Town theme came first. Steven was in the Pokemon Tower and was standing in front of a tombstone, simply staring at it. His party was empty. He had no Pokemon, no money, no badges, and his playtime was 8,795 hours. His confident smile he once had was gone, and that's when it hit him. This was why there was no champion to challenge in Pokemon Red and Blue. The previous champion gave up. Mickey had died, and so had a part of Steven. Walking around the world, every person said the same things. They asked if Steven was okay, if there was anything they could do, or that everything would be alright. He never replied to any of them. Every Pokemon Steven encountered simply left him be, ignored him, or wandered off. No matter where he went, the Lavender Town theme was still playing. The author finally decided to head home. Inside his old home was Mike, who did nothing but apologize. Steven decided to go to bed. He woke up in the middle of the night and proclaimed that he could bring her back with what he called it. It turned out to be Missing No. After Steven caught Missing No at Cinnabar Island, the author knew where he needed to go. To the Pokemon Tower. Steven approached Mickey's grave and used Missing No. He obtained a strange item, and the game took control over the player. Steven left the tower and slowly but surely headed back to Pallet Town. As he approached Pallet Town, the music grew lower and lower in pitch until it was nothing more than a dark rumble of sounds. As he entered his old home again, the music stopped. He stopped at his brother's bed and stood perfectly still. The author examined his trainer card. A low growl noise was heard, and what Steven had become was displayed on screen. The author had been with this boy from the beginning until the end, and now he had turned into this. He watched him go insane. As the author checked his Pokemon, he only had one Pokemon with 0 HP. As he selected it, there were 4 options. The author chose Strangle. The menu closed and showed Steven in his room again. "Goodbye," he said. The game shut itself off. As the author turned it on again, he saw a zoomed-out view of Pallet Town, showing Steven's home with tall grass surrounding it and unmovable stones blocking it from the rest of the world. There was no music, no movement, until the screen faded to white before going back to the title screen. The title screen looked just like it had looked when the author started. He attempted to hit continue, but nothing but a dialog box popped up, saying a simple phrase. No. Number 3. A difficult task. This story deals with something that I've thought about when it comes to Pokemon. The demolition of the Pokemon Tower, and the subsequent building of the radio tower that was built in its place. You'd think that the people of the Pokemon world would have more respect for the deceased, but I guess not. A difficult task details the experiences of one worker who was tasked with demolishing the tower together with a few other workers. The workers were to hollow out the entire place floor by floor before disassembling the frame. Most graves were empty to the relief of the workers, as only words and the tombstones were left as memories. But unfortunately, some weren't. As they had to remove every casket from their place, they had to be opened. None of the corpses were fresh, and the smell was unbearable. The more the worker had to handle these graves, the more he started regretting taking this job. The high pay did not make up for the moral crimes he and his workers were committing. Sounds came often that seemed to emit from nowhere as they painfully and slowly gouged out the tower. Most were soft Pokemon sounds, growls, or a sob, but some were almost human-like. On the 4th floor, the worker came across the image of a crying Golduck. As soon as he saw it, it was gone. As he turned away, he saw a Vulpix floating behind the closest man's head. Its eyes were blank with misery. As he looked around, every other worker had a Pokemon floating behind them, and he knew why he had seen Golduck. It was his own deceased Pokemon, who had been taken from him all those years ago in a violent battle with an electrode. It was a hard blow to his confidence, and now here he was as an adult, digging up the grave of his old friend. The floating Pokemon were the ones who had parted ways with their trainers. They were silent, but in their eyes held much pity. They understood. No more. He could not do it anymore. And so, he left the Pokemon Tower for the last time, and begged for forgiveness. Golduck's presence slowly dissipated. The tower was still torn down. The worker never got paid, and he could never visit Lavender Town again. Years later, the man met another man who had worked with him at the tower, the one whose Vulpix had followed him. He told the worker that he had gotten a radio, and all he ever heard from the broadcast was his late Vulpix calling out for him, while his family only heard radio broadcasts. The same had happened to every other worker who had worked with tearing the tower down. But the workers eventually found peace and forgiveness after time, and therefore the mournful cries of their Pokemon stopped. But the rest of the people across Kanto, whose Pokemon had been buried and then dug up, reported that when they left their radio on late in the night and listened hard enough, they would hear the pained protesting, the growling, the sobs, and the wails of their poor departed Pokemon's restless souls. Number 2. Ruins of Alph, Embedded Images and Strangeness. Acting as a sequel of sorts to the Lavender Town Missing Frequencies mystery, this story goes over another mystery that arises due to a strange thing occurring when different songs from older Pokemon games are played together and toyed with. It's no coincidence that the move Curse was introduced in Generation 2 of Pokemon. Sounds are a visual medium as well. Any piece of music can alter your state of mind and emotions, but what else can sounds do? There's no doubt that the sound team of the early Pokemon games wanted to create an eerie effect in the music for Lavender Town in Pokemon Red and Green in Japan. Most notably the high-pitched frequencies, which could only be heard by those with acute hearing. Newer versions of the cartridges slightly changed these frequencies to avoid suspicion. Remember this video that I showed a while back in my previous videos? Apparently, the person who posted the original video, Anthony, had developed a special way to retrieve the original frequencies that were inserted into the games before the developed music was redesigned to fit with the limitations of the Game Boy. According to Anthony, certain hints were left in the music, which encouraged him to develop a way to analyze the sounds hidden within and insert special tones which mimicked the original intentions of the music before it was changed. The tones he added constructed unusual images within the sound when combined with the original Pokemon music, and these images had been embedded into the music through methods of steganography, as in concealing a file within another file. In the second generation games, these images were waiting for the key to be unlocked. 2 sound files from these games fit together in an interesting way. The music from the ruins of Alph, and the strange sounds that emit from your radio while inside the ruins. These 2 sounds cannot be played together while playing the game, but they can be while using a computer. And this is what Edwin, the apparent uploader of the last video, tried to do while using certain algorithms that Anthony had used when creating said video. Edwin had combined certain changes Anthony had made to the original Lavender Town music, together with changes made to the Ruins of Alph music. It is said in the game that Unknown communicate with radio waves. What was constructed in place of the Pokemon Tower? The Radio Tower. The video I am about to show clips from was apparently created with Anthony's algorithm with a binaural beat added in the background. Could the Lavender Town theme and the Ruins of Alph music have something in common? An accident? Something that could drive someone insane? Now I must warn you, the following clip will include sounds and certain sound waves that may make you feel sick. Either turn down the volume of your speakers or headphones or skip this part. Your health is important. But if you're curious enough, stick around. This is what Edwin uncovered. And now, number 1. Hypno's Lullaby. Come, little children, come with me. Safe and happy you will be. Away from your homes now let us run. With Hypno you'll have so much fun. Oh, little children, please don't cry. Hypno wouldn't hurt a fly. Be free, be free, be free to play. Come down in my cave with me to stay. Oh, little children, please don't squirm. Those ropes, I know, will hold you firm. Hypno tells you this is true, but sadly Hypno lied to you. Oh, little children, you mustn't leave your families, for you will grieve. Their minds will unravel at the seams, allowing me to haunt their dreams. But surely all of you must know that it is time for you to go. Oh, little children, you weren't clever. Now you shall stay with me forever. Thanks for watching this very special Christmas video, guys. I hope you liked it. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, everyone. And thanks for 2015. You're all incredible. Here's to the future. Stay awesome, everyone. Goodbye! Sadly, Hypno lied to you.
Really?